Hello, everyone. It's Phil Jones from Projector Reviews, and joining me is Matt Murray from AVPro Edge. And we're going to talk about some of the great products that they have that you can utilize in a business or home application. So, Matt, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Before we get started, I'd like to thank Matt and AVPro Edge, along with Murideo, for helping us put on the Fall Projection Summit, where we talk about all of the things you need to properly install and optimize a projection system. And part of it has to do with video distribution. And that's what these guys are the best at. So Matt, can you talk a little bit about AVPro and who the company is?
Definitely. AVPro Global is the kind of parent company. We have two sides of things that we do. One is Murideo, which you guys probably, if you're following the webinars, you'll see Jason. But what we do over there is we make test and measurement equipment. So a lot of our customers for our HDMI testing products are other manufacturers making HDMI products, such as gaming consoles, sources, displays, AVRs, really you name it. So that's kind of been a big part of our business for a long time. And where we really started was with the test and measurement side of things. And then we kind of carried that knowledge over into HDMI connectivity. So we kind of were hearing a lot of grumblings that there just was a lot of difficulty with HDMI distribution, especially once 2.0 came out and we started to having to deal with HDR. We were uniquely positioned because we had a long history with Imaging Science Foundation and Hollywood crowd and people who were making this content. So we really had deep understanding of how HDR worked and how it needed to be treated. So we came out with a line of products and HDMI cables and things like that, and then here we are today.
In fact, I depend on AVPro Edge for many of my video distribution needs. In fact, in my lab at Projector Reviews, as well as my office and my audio side of my day job, we utilize their products throughout our facilities. And I even utilize those products in my own home theater system. And when it comes to great video distribution solutions, nobody has a wider selection and options than AVPro Edge. Now, the future of video we know is actually 8K. And that is because of all of these things like these game systems that are coming out that are talking about 4K 60 and 4K 120. And those are also not only the game companies promoting it a lot, we also know that the TV companies are promoting it a lot. So now people may have multiple TVs and multiple 8K displays and multiple 8K sources. So now you need the ability to route that 8K or 4K 120 video to the proper display, or maybe you want to utilize your existing receiver in one of these new 8K or 4K 120 infrastructures. AVPro Edge has came up with a great new device. So can you talk about this guy?
Yep. So what this is a derivative of a product we've sold for a long time that is a 4x2 matrix switch slash AVR bypass. We'll look at why it does that. But basically, it's a 4 input, 2 output switcher for having multiple sources running 40 gig, multiple gaming systems. This is going in to home theaters all over the place because you don't want to remove all of the components and replace everything in the system. This is a good way to get multiple sources all working together. We're seeing a lot of AVRs that only have one input for 8K. We're seeing a lot of TVs that only have one input for 8K. So this is a real problem solver right now.
Exactly. Now I actually have the 18 gigabit version of this 4 in 2 out. And I use it. I have a full AVR with full video switching in my theater, but in my lab in this room where I evaluate multiple projectors, I didn't want to bring a whole giant receiver and sound system in here. So I have the 18 gig 4 in 2 out, the little brother of this guy, in this space. So now I have my kaleidoscope, my Apple TV, my computer, and also a 4K Blu-ray player connected to this device, and I can feed 2 projectors. So if I want to do side-by-side evaluation, or maybe a long throw on my cart and a short throw in the front of the room, and I want to switch between the 2 in testing, I am good to go. I love the thing. Now, I want the new one because we're starting to get more 8K options are being introduced, including the JVCs that would in Z series, which support 8K inputs. This is my next thing on my shopping list. The other thing that I like about it, and he brought it up earlier, is there's different ways to use it. There's 2 different kind of modes or in here. So what are these? So describe these 2 modes that are in this unit.
Basically, it can work as a matrix, so that you can switch each output independently, or it can work as a distribution amplifier, and where you would use that, so matrix is where you can put one source on one screen and another source on another screen. In the distribution amplification world, what you want to do is have a mirrored output, but when you do that, the second output we can now downscale to essentially, accommodate older AVRs and older displays if they're in the mix and things like that.
Well, see, that's cool, because say you went out and you had an 8K TV and you had a 4K TV, or you had a 4K TV and an HD TV. A lot of times the system will dumb itself down to the capabilities of the lower display. This will allow you to have 4K in this room and HD in that room. It'll actually allow you to get the most out of both displays. So a 4K source can come in, or an 8K source can come in. That can be 8K, and the other one could be 4K, which is really, really cool. This is how I use this device, or how I would use this device in my lab. Instead of it being 2 TVs, it would be 2 projectors. I plug in my sources. I can control it from my laptop and switch back and forth. I can feed. I'm a poor man, so in my office, I actually have a sound bar connected to the optical out, because most projectors don't make any sound, and I don't want to watch silent movies for hours at a time. So I can have 2 projectors connected and a sound bar, and I can quickly switch back and forth using the web version, my control system, or the included remote control, or the buttons on the front. Very compact, works great for that application. The other one is I have an expensive surround sound processor that happens to be a 4K unit. A lot of times, if you look at these surround sound processors, they have the latest surround sound formats in them. They'll have IMAX Enhanced, DTSX, DTSX Pro. They'll have Dolby Atmos. They'll have Aural 3D. They have all the surround sound formats and functionality that I will ever need. The only reason why I would be tempted to replace it is because it doesn't have the highest, newest video distribution capabilities. And that's another cool thing about this. Instead of me going out and spending several $1,000s on a new AVR, I can put this in my rack, and this can handle the switching duties, correct?
Oh yeah. So yeah, this is a really, really common application, and people who are serious with theaters do this a lot. So people invest a lot of money building rooms around audio systems, and they invest a lot of money in AVRs. The market for AVRs starts at maybe $500 to $2,000 for entry-level stuff, to well over $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for some of these products. So this does come in handy when you're not ready to replace your audio system, but you're ready to upgrade your video. You've got a new projector. Think of the financial investment to put in a new projector in one of these, and keep your surround sound intact. It's a really nice upgrade without having to do the audio at that time.
Exactly. I mean, telling a guy that has a JBL synthesis system or a Trinoff,
Right.
24 channel system, that he's going to have to spend another 10, 15,000 bucks if he wants to switch 8K video, not going to be happy. I wouldn't be happy. So so this literally extends the life of a high-end multi-channel surround sound
Right.
processor because it can handle the video for you. And you guys work really well with all of the different control systems. So it's seamless. So my spouse and my kids would not know that this is handling the switching duties. They hit the same button on the remote control. It's just instead of the video switching being done internally in the surround processor or AV receiver, it is done externally in this box. And the user experience is still the same.
This one
So that's
also
important.
has a way that you can put it into auto detect mode. So, like, let's say you're using it and you do the same thing. You turn on the projector, you turn on your audio system or whatever you're turning on, and then whatever source gets turned on becomes the active source.
I think, like I said, I love this thing. So Matt, that's the next thing that's on my shopping list. Okay. Now, the one thing we do want to point out as well is you notice that it said it was a 40 gigabit per second matrix switcher and AVR bypass, right? And people go, well, HDMI 2.1 can support up to 48. For I know a lot of geeks that hang out on this on our channel, right? But it's something we always want to stress. Do you actually need 48, Matt, for a 10-bit display, which is pretty much 99% of the displays on the market today?
Yeah, for 95% of the HDMI spec, 40 gig is where you get, that's kind of where the return on investment when you're building products and you're an IC manufacturer and you're developing a piece of an integrated circuit or a chip, developing it to 48 gig, it's a lot less bang for your buck, right? Because you're only picking up a handful of things that, just like Phil's showing you, the TVs can't even really do anyways. So that's kind of why we sat down at 40 gig. And the other thing is you're limited to only the technology available at the time. So
Mhm,
the current
mhm,
ICs are 40 gig,
mhm.
and our job is to give you the best technology of the day. And if I had a crystal ball, I've wished and hoped that I've had one forever and ever. That could change at any given time.
Yeah, and we do want to point this out. Like you said, 95% of it, you're good to go. Of the spec is covered by 40. The other 5% is 12-bit, requires like 12-bit, that type of stuff. But like I said, feeding a 10-bit panel a 12-bit signal is like you driving a Volkswagen and me telling you to go 200 miles an hour. I understand what you want me to do, but I can't do anything with that. I can do as fast as I possibly can. So
Right.
yes, if I have a 48 gig signal and I'm feeding a 10-bit panel, I'm just giving it directions that it can't possibly use. It'll try its best to get the most out of it, but it can't possibly use it. Now, the other thing that we want to point out is, as he said, it's a limitation of many of the chipsets. And not only means the ones that are in the displays, but also right now, the only 8K 60 and 4K 120 possible sources have to do with graphics cards and gaming consoles. Now, you could go out and build the biggest, baddest gaming PC in the world. It's got 80,000 gigs of RAM and it's the size of a small refrigerator. And I got to power with a nuclear reactor. Well, guess what? I can dial up all of the settings to like kill mode, but the output coming out of the graphics card is going to be limited to the pipe. And the pipe right now on that graphics card is 40. All right. So you can crank them up the 12-bit or 16-bit color at 8,000 frames per second, at 20K, what's gonna come out of the box is 40.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way it is. And that's a limitation. The cool thing is by the time 48 comes, I'm sure Matt's gonna show up with a 48 gigabit matrix switcher. And you still don't have to replace your high-end AVR in order to get there as well. So I think this is a great, awesome solution. So that's one thing that I've always wanted. That's why I want to bring you over, because I think that is one of the coolest pieces, because it really
Mm-hmm.
extends the life of many projector enthusiasts home theater systems when it comes to video distribution. Now, some other things you guys have are you mentioned that you're into cables. So the other thing people want to ask about is 48 gigabit passive HDMI cables. Or if you talk about 48, you're not going to see 48. They will put 48 on the box so you know what you're getting. But a lot of times all you'll see on the box is ultra high speed. But talk a little bit about your passive HDMI cables.
So basically, like Phil's saying, we focus more on the bandwidth capability. So what we want is we want a clean eye pattern, which we'll look at on all lengths of the cable at 48 gig per second, so 12 gig per channel. So that's really critical to do. And there's a couple of ways that manufacturers can get this done, and one is kind of trial and error. And another way is you invest in your test equipment. So we actually have an oscilloscope that can go up to 20 gigahertz. And what that allows us to do is actually take measurements for HDMI 2.0, 2.1, doing actual CTS tests inside of our own lab. So we know exactly in real time as we're building things, how things are coming along. Saves us, an immense amount of time from having to send to third-party labs and stuff. But also, what it does for us is allows us to really intimately understand how small changes can really impact these HDMI signals. So that right there, what you're looking at is an oscilloscope image. So that's an actual test that we've done. And you're looking at the actual analog waveform. And if the analog waveform is not formed properly, the digital data can no longer be understood. So that's why oftentimes when you're dealing with HDMI issues, it's just like, crap, I don't have a picture, or it's blinking, or something is flashing, or something weird is happening like that. That's how digital data being not really properly decoded, that's how it kind of manifests itself.
Yeah. And I always say, because I used to always think before I talked to Matt that, like, you always hear digital, neither you have a signal or you don't. No, neither you have a clean signal or it's so bad it doesn't know what you're saying and it says I quit.
Exactly.
So that's, or I get sparklies and all sorts of different artifacts in the signal. And like I said, the maximum length for a lot of for the passive cables, you say is about 4 meters, right? For a 48 gig cable.
4 meters is the most we'll go. If you have got companies telling you they have a 5 meter or longer 48 gig passive HDMI cable, I would be highly suspect of that, unless the gauge of the cable is about that thick. So, and that makes it unusable. So beyond 4 meters, we go fiber because that's the only way to keep the cable malleable and be able to run it to places and things like that. So we basically, use some copper for low-level transmission, DDC exchange and stuff like that. But the actual data lines are pure fiber.
Exactly, because as they get longer, it gets harder to send that signal from point A to point B. It starts adding noise, so it gets to the point where it doesn't know what you're talking about, and the picture goes away. And that's where the optical comes in, because optical cable, you can do some insane lengths. Like this is one of the bullet train optical HDMI cables that supports 48 gigabits per second and all of the latest HDMI functionality, VRR, eARC, everything.
330 feet.
Okay. At 100 meters. So if your house is bigger than that, wow, I need to move in with you. So this shows some insane links that are done. Now
it's
the big
a
thing
football
about
field.
Yeah, you can run a cable a football field, which is crazy. Now the big thing about these cables is the fiber that's in this cable can support a lot more than that, right?
Yeah, this is actual clear line SSF fiber. I don't expect everybody, unless you're in the integration community, to know who they are. But basically, what they've done is created a piece of fiber that is actual glass. So using fiber optic cable and making it viable for what we call last mile installation, used to rely on plastic fiber, which the clarity was no good, bandwidth was fairly low. So it's actual glass fiber with a polymer coating on it that allows us to terminate this in the field. So what that means is when you pull one of those optical cables of ours, it's got this really high grade fiber in it that actually is not just useless, brittle, or plastic fiber. When things change in 10, 20 years, or new homeowners come in, or anything really, you've essentially ran fiber throughout that home. You can cut the ends off and terminate it into any future device that may come out.
And that's the big point. The reason why this cable is limited to 48 is because of the ends that are doing the translation from
Right.
turning the signal into the inputs, converting it to the optical signal, and to feed down the fiber, and the output to reconvert it. The limitations are the tips, not the cable. So nice thing about this, I'm all about cry once, buy once, cry once. You pull this piece of wire, you know that even in the future, if all of a sudden a hologram TV shows up that requires 100 gigabits per second, you would just have to cut the ends off and re-terminate it, or utilize one of your baluns that are available. Because right now, you can pull a piece of fiber. We recommend that to everybody. Yes, pull your Cat 6. Yes, but you also want to pull your fiber. If you pull a piece of fiber or a couple pieces of fiber, you can start off using that fiber for 18. So say 4K 60 at 4K 60 HDR. Then you can swap those baluns eventually for 48 gig ones to run 8K 60 or 4K 120 signals. And in the future, when your hologram TV comes in 10, 12 years, all you have to do is replace the HDMI extenders with the newest AVPro Edge ones. There's a lot of flexibility when it comes to optical. And you guys have a huge amount of extender options. And a lot of these options will not only pass the video signal, but things such as your control signals, RS-232, even your Ethernet, all down one line if you decide you want to do so. I think these are really cool. Yeah, and last but not least, we always say and we stress that the quickest way to ensure that your system is going to be compatible is to run a piece of conduit. Because then if something else comes down, like freaking laser beams, you can actually just pull something else down this conduit. So
yep,
so that's,
use the conduit. I mean, that's what we always tell people is basically pull two cats, a piece of duplex fiber, which essentially means two pieces of fiber, and put it in a piece of conduit, and you're good forever. If you can't get conduit, make sure you get the two cats and the fiber. And the cats you still want. I know that that's like kind of backwards thinking, but fiber can't transport power, so cat is still going to play a role here in powering peripheral devices. So just remember that. You don't want to, if you just pull fiber, you might be shooting yourself in the foot.
yeah, you need power over Ethernet stuff for like your control panels and things like that. Even this, the power.
Yeah, so even fiber extender, and this is just a little kind of sneak peek into our future. We're our extender products that will be coming out in 2022 will have the ability to be powered with a piece of Ethernet cable. So, if that's there, you plug in with the fiber for all of your signal, HDMI, RS-232, et cetera, and then you could just power it with the cat cable.
Yeah, because a lot of times these extenders, the receiver is going behind the TV or up above with a projector, and you don't want to worry about running power to it, and you want a consistent power source,
right?
And that is a great thing for that. So like I said, you guys make passive cables for 18 gig, 48 gig. You make video switching that goes all the way up to 48. You make optical. You have optical. You offer optical cables. You offer optical HDMI extenders. You offer high-end HDBaseT solutions that even have eARC. Actually, a few years ago, I actually walked around CEDIA and I was saying, show me an HDBaseT solution that supports ARC. And most people just looked at me like, that's not possible, or I can't do it. And the first company that offered it, ta-da, AVPro Edge offers those types of solutions. So if you're looking for high-end balance or high-end HDMI extenders, they make basically all sorts of options at all sorts of budgets.
We're launching an eARC one too this month, just so you know.
Oh, I may have to get a couple of those for my particular space. And like I said, right now I am using this little 18 gig input matrix switch bypass in my home. I'm looking to get the 48 for my lab because I need to upgrade. And I'm also getting ready to go over to the office right now to play with this guy. This is a 18 gigabit capable matrix switcher that's modular, is the one that I got. And you could put in different types of modules to it to do all sorts of crazy options. So we're using this to run an office building, our office at our new my new audio company's global headquarters, and we can send video everywhere and audio everywhere utilizing this particular solution. And I am in love with this thing. And it's basically you just plug in the pieces that you need, right?
Yeah, essentially you, and there are now several different cards. We have HDMI input cards, we have scaling input and output cards, we have HDBaseT, which is over category cable, output cards and input cards. We have audio input cards to add additional audio sources, and then also these are starting to, we're going to be introducing the fiber output cards soon here too.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, because I was actually using this. We use this to run the video in the lobby, the video in the different showrooms, and everything else. So it's great. I can play the same thing, the football game, throughout the entire building, or I can play rock and roll videos in the lobby and the football game the rest of the building. It's really simple to use and it works splendidly well. And you guys also make different types of tools to solve problems too. Can you talk about this little guy? Because this can be a lifesaver for a lot of people.
These are critically important for especially installers. You know, homeowners alike can get benefit from things like this when we're dealing with heated communication issues, which is far and away, Phil will tell you, the most common problem in any AV system is, your first culprit is always heated you go to. So what these things do is just give you the control over the heated. So you're no longer a slave to what an AVR is doing or what a TV is doing or some other intermediary device. So everything has an heated all the way down the chain, and it can change it. So this gives you the ability to essentially force the source device to behave how you want it to behave. So very, very powerful tool that, you know, these are on, if you're using home integrators at your house to manage your AV systems, there's a good chance that they have one or two of these on their truck.
Exactly, because it's almost the best way to think of EDIT is the source device asks the display, "Who are you?" and are you authorized?
Right.
And what happens is, as you add more devices in the chain, the source has to ask the TV who, or actually a lot of times it could be the source has to ask the HDMI extender, receiver who are you, the transmitter who are you, the receiver who are you, the AVR who are you, you know, and the TV who are you. And by the time it asks all those people, you're like playing a game of telephone. And at the very end, it goes, you at the end, I don't know who you are, you get nothing. So, or you get.
It's funny you said that, because that's what I was gonna just say. Is it is the game of telephone, because the source device, no matter what went on downstream between all those other communications, the source device only gets to hear it from one mouth, so to speak. You know.
Exactly. And this fixes a lot of that. And like I said, I've used these to solve problems for years. So you guys have lots of really, really cool things. Now we could go on and talk about all of the other different parts and services and all the different types of systems that you guys offer, video distribution. Now you're also doing video over Ethernet now. So there's a huge amount of options for your products. So let me ask you a question. You look at this and it looks like it's a Cat5 cable or a Cat6 cable. How is this different than HDBaseT? Can you explain that? Because I think that's pretty interesting.
The difference is HDBaseT is a point-to-point solution, and it's a generally uncompressed solution. So they have uncompressed for 9 gig and uncompressed for 18 gig, and we can do minimal front-end manipulation to get 18 gig to work over the 10 gig pipe, and we can also use an uncompressed 18 gig scenario. What this does is this takes the video signal, and it could be 4K, and it can even be 8K. And what it will do is it will turn it into an IP packet and make it extremely low bandwidth. So this is actually 1 gigabit, this system here, and they're infinitely scalable. So that's kind of the big part here is the scalability in the commercial world. This is a phenomenal solution. It does go into some residential applications too. It would be when things are kind of more passively viewed, right? Because if we want the higher quality, highest quality video, HDBaseT is a better option because it doesn't use as much compression. This uses spatial compression, saves you a ton of data, gives you a lot more scalability, but you pay for it a little bit in the picture quality department. So they very different applications.
On a menu or the football, like if you have a hotel or something that has thousands of, hundreds of the TVs, and you want to show there's the new Broadway show that's coming. No one's sitting there going, I think I see a chroma error in that particular signal.
Right.
They're not looking at that. So this is made so large, like this is a 48 port. So if you can have 48 different video, and you can stack these. So you can go, it can get insane.
We've done systems, the largest we've done so far since this launched, we launched this about 8 months ago, was 38 sources and 245 receivers. So for 245 TVs.
Wow, that's crazy. So if you're looking for, HDBaseT is, couple of sources, higher quality in a home. This is a tremendous amount of sources and a tremendous amount of displays, and you're more concerned with consistent performance and reliable performance over maximum picture quality. So as you can see, these guys have a tremendous amount of products that they offer. So to learn more about AVPro Edge's product assortment, check out avproedge.com. Matt, thank you for coming and talking about some of the cool options that you guys offer.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Phil. Always a pleasure.
Okay. So take care, everyone, and we will talk to you soon.